is a giving circle here in New York City. And we were founded to grow and strengthen the Jewish Giving Circle movement. And it became pretty clear that this was a rich and thriving movement that needed support beyond the Jewish world. We conducted a field-wide survey, much like the one you're going to hear about, in 2016. And we received a grant from the Gates Foundation to launch what eventually became Philanthropy Together. I believe we received that grant 6 years ago. Philanthropy Together launched 5 years ago in help with our partners, Community Investment Network, Latino Community Fund, American Muslim Community Foundation. I'm sure I'm forgetting others. I was not actually a part of that initiative, but what came out of it was Philanthropy Together, which is this backbone network supporting giving circles across the US. And you'll hear a bit more about their work, but they helped launch the survey that was sort of a second version of the 2016 survey studying collective giving across the US. That really allowed us as an amplifier to focus much more intentionally on the Jewish piece of our work, and we came into the Jewish Federations of North America in 2020. And we've been there ever since. So that's who we are. Our agenda for today is that we will be hearing a lot about the survey itself. We will be recording, which we're doing already, great. And most of this will be presentation about the survey, and then there'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions. And we will, if we have time, we'll do some workshopping about how this applies to your own work, but you are all exceptional professionals, and if we don't get to that, I encourage you to workshop on your own. How does this apply to me, my giving circle, my community, whatever that is, we'll see. And then we'll close with a survey. So I ask you not to leave before you fill out the survey, or if you leave, look for it in your email because it's really helpful for us. So with that, I am thrilled to introduce the primary investigators of the research, Adriana Lawson Ceballos. I should have asked you beforehand how to pronounce that, and Michael Layton. Thank you.
No worries. I'm so excited to be here with you all. And thank you so much, Dara, for sharing your slides. We should have coordinated when we were preparing 30 minutes ago. And so I'm really grateful that you're jumping in and going to move us along. So my name is Adriana Lozon Ceballos. My pronouns are she, her. And as Sasha said, I am one of the two primary investigators for this really exciting report that we're excited to contextualize to the Amplifier and Jewish Giving Circle spaces today. So be sure to check it out. On the next slide, you'll see that this research was really funded by a few different big names. And that just goes to show that there is an interest from larger foundations to understand in what ways we can be catalyzing more giving by more people across the country. So what is very exciting is on the next slide is tying it to what Sasha was saying, that I think it was like 2016, it was around 2016 that Amplifier and a few of these groups on the screen got together and said, like, how might we create a larger impact together, which is so much at the core and nexus of what collective giving and giving circles do to begin with. And so it's lovely to see this at scale and coming together to really create an organization that could host some of the research and learning and programming that could continue to sustain the movement across the country and across the world. And so when we set out to do this research, we really had two overall goals. The first one was that we were going to make this research actionable to the community that was participating. And that really was our commitment to say, y'all gave us your time, you gave us access to your donors, you gave us access to the lived experience that comes with hosting these groups. We wanted to make sure that we got data that helped you do this better and helped you do this more and helped you do this more successfully. And so we're making the rounds with the networks on the screen who were able to bring us in this meaningful way so that we report back and create a full circle feedback loop with you all. And the second part of it was that we really wanted to show that while collective giving and giving circles seem familiar to so many of our diverse country, there is some through lines and there are also some unique aspects of it. And so we didn't want to lose the diversity that really seeded this and that has made this something so culturally relevant to so many different groups. And so we're very excited to be able to jump in. So on the next slide, you'll see that there is it's the outline of the report, and we encourage you to check it out. Particularly, and we'll go through the 5 key findings today, and we'll actually like dive into some of the amplifier specific Jewish Giving Circle findings. But so often folks are like, oh, I don't know if I can do it this way, or my community looks like this, or I don't know if that would work here. The typology and archetype section of the report is fantastic because it questions, it helps us to think outside the box, and it helps us to find ways that this really feels like a coming home. And so I would encourage you all to like seek some inspiration there. And I know that there was a lot of challenges that came with hosting and growing these groups during the pandemic. So we did a little closer look there. And we also heard from so many Giving Circle members and infrastructure groups. We heard from Sasha, and I saw some other names in the audience that I was like, oh, I'm so excited that you're here. And so we also kept those quotes. We think that so much of what we heard were these stories, and we saw the through lines through all of them, but we really wanted to create a space where if someone gave us permission to say what they said, we think you should hear it. So moving along, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague and brother from another mother, Michael Layton, who is a community philanthropy chair, the W.K. Kellogg Community Philanthropy Chair at the Dorothy A. Johnson Center for Philanthropy. Did I get that right?
So impressive. And I think you did it without taking a breath. So cheers to you. Thank you. You've heard it so many times, it probably just comes right out of your mouth very easily now. So to take a half a step back before we dive in, one of our colleagues from Philanthropy Together actually wrote a blog that tells the story of how that first 2016 study led to the creation of Philanthropy Together through the work of networks. And so this study is, again, a conversation between research and practice, with the idea being to reach people like you that are on this call with information, data, and analysis that is actionable. So I'm going to give you the overview of the 5 major areas of our findings. And then Adriana is going to take a deep dive into particular findings related to Amplifier and its network. So that's kind of the overview of what we're going to do. We start off with something that's familiar to the mission of Amplifier, that idea of democratizing and diversifying philanthropy as being an important aspect of what collective giving does. And collective giving, perhaps, or living might do that as well. And here, as you can see, the sort of top line result that's gotten a lot of play in Barron's and other publications is the growth of the field. And Adriana did an amazing job of putting together the data that substantiates the idea that there are nearly 4,000 collective giving groups. They are mobilized 370,000 philanthropists across the United States who have donated a little over $3 billion, billion with a B. And the scope and scale and growth of that movement is truly something impressive and inspiring. And in so doing, it's including more people and more different kinds of people. We found that 61% of people that are in collective giving now have joined since 2016. That's an incredible amount of growth. And not only that, but people staying. 7.5 years average membership. That's a pretty strong track record. And as we'll see later in the findings, a great opportunity to grow in your understanding of philanthropy and how you engage with your community. It is mainly a movement that is led and populated by women. 60% of groups are composed entirely of women. And a lot of the profiles and things that you read focus on women and their role in promoting giving together. And I think most importantly and interesting to me, it's really shifting the narrative around who is considered a philanthropist. Too often when we hear that word, we think of very wealthy white men writing big checks to big institutions. And as we'll see in the course of these findings, it's really about average people pooling resources together so that everybody realizes through their 5 T's, which we understand is talent, treasure, time, ties, and testimony, they improve their communities. And that's really what it's about, joining with others and improving communities. So the second major area of finding is that collective giving tends to expand what gets funded. So thinking about the kinds of activities, the kinds of causes that get support also broaden, just as the definition of a philanthropist is broadened. And for example, 60% of groups have a commitment to addressing racial and ethnic equity. And there's been a lot of debate and discussion within philanthropy, understood as foundations, and how they've made certain claims and promises in the aftermath of 2020, and have failed to live up to it. Collective giving groups hold those values closely. They're also deeply engaged in place-based giving. So 93% of groups draw their membership from a single locale or a state, and about 70% of funds stay local. And so it's really getting engaged with where you live, an important driving force. And 3, collective giving pushes the bounds of how philanthropy is practiced. And this kind of flows logically almost from the first 2 findings. 72% of members say that their participation enhances how they understand philanthropy. 86%, their ability to understand their community and an issue focus. By joining together, by discussing, by channeling funds, your understanding of causes, your understanding of what philanthropy is, it improves greatly. And the last finding I'll highlight here, 72% of groups provide general operating or unrestricted funds. And that's pretty good compared to the field as a whole. We see the provision of general operating funds being an important practice of trust-based philanthropy, where donors trust in the leadership of an organization to know what they're doing. And as we'll see when Adriana shares the amplifier results, that percentage is even higher among amplifier networks, which is a real testament to the values-driven nature of your network. Fourthly, collective giving deeply impacts members themselves. And this is a contribution that my colleague Adriana really highlighted in her dissertation work, and that we brought to the national level with this one. 83% said it increased their confidence when taking action to improve their communities. 91% said it increases their sense of belonging to a community. And it makes a world of sense. You get together with people from your community, you talk about what matters to you, and you channel resources to affect change in your community. So of course it's going to enhance your sense of belonging. It's going to be conducive to you living your values, living with purpose. And so the idea that being part of a giving circle would have those major attributes just makes sense. And then 5th and finally, collective giving is a catalyst for social cohesion and change. And social cohesion, for me, it's probably the major crisis that we face in our country right now. Almost any issue you can think about, the hyper-partisanship and conflict that we have is something that can really undermine our future as a republic. And collective giving enhances people's ability to live their values. I said to you when the screen went wacky there for a second, but now I can, in good conscience, pass the baton back to my dear friend and sister from another mister, Adriana.
I cannot believe that Michael actually kept that to 10 minutes. Y'all are very lucky because he just talks and talks and talks. We are both so passionate about this. Like, we could talk about this for hours. So great job, Michael. You nailed it. And we will have all of these slides for you all, and you can please access the report, because now we get to dig in on what amplifier circles are doing. And I have a lovely quote from Sasha here that you all can read, but we are going to try to at least have one more quote that shows some of the voices that we got to hear. So let's go into the next slide that talks about the characteristics. Okay, So we were thinking about the audience in the room, and if you may host one, you may be part of one, you may be thinking about it. So like, what do these look like? What are the giving circles around you and in your network? What are their characteristics? And what was really interesting was that when we looked at the size of membership, it was pretty evenly distributed in either small or very big. And so sky's the limit in terms of how many members you all want to cultivate in this. But 45% of your circles have 25 members or less, which is pretty typical. But 36% have between 100 and 250 members. So that was like quite a spread on both ends, which was in an interesting and unique perspective compared to other networks. And then 63% of your circles draw members from the same city and county, which was a bit higher than the larger national study when we looked at just city and county. And that makes sense. I think that it's related to, all of you all having like Jewish federations in hyperlocal locations that like allow you to draw from your Jewish community where you are. Um, and we thought this one was really interesting that 91% of amplifier giving circles report sharing an identity among their members, which when you look at what the next question was, what is that identity? 73% said faith, but 62% said gender. And the amplifier lines are the ones that are in pink. The national studies are the ones that are in blue. So you can see that like when it comes to sorry, I meant 27% for gender, but when it comes to faith, like it is what's bringing folks together largely when compared to others. But look at sexual orientation or identity. That's much higher than the average, right? And so that's really interesting, as well as the age. And we think that a lot of that has to do with some of the younger Jewish giving circles that we see pop up across the country, which are also really exciting to see. So we'll go on to the next slide to talk a little bit about the giving itself. So what are you all funding? This is the exciting part. Like Michael and I had like a moment when we said 91% of your groups are offering general operating support. Like, round of applause. That's really exciting. And it's interesting to see that y'all are focused on general operating and program project expenses. And I love that that is like a very focused giving that is also like, we trust you to do what you need to do for this program or this organization. And like if you're thinking about starting one, or if you're thinking about like how do I actually manage the money that comes in, it was really interesting to see that 73% of your circles require a minimum donation, right? And we gave options of like, do you have like give an amount that's personally significant, give, like, we have different tiers depending on like your income or your age or your whatever. Like, it's pretty simple. 73% require a minimum donation. And what that minimum donation is pretty evenly split between $500 or less, which is with 38% of your groups, or between 1,000 and 5,000, which is for 28% of your groups. And so in terms of when the groups are picking organizations, we asked folks, what do you think is important? And we gave a whole list of criterias of what you all thought was important as respondents. And 77% said that it was really important that the organization's leadership reflect the community that it's serving. And I really appreciate that, because there is a sense of wanting community to be in leadership spaces that is really exciting. Almost half of you all said that it's important that the organization have direct community connections, right? And 63% said it was important that organizations support marginalized communities. And what was really interesting, and this was much higher than national, but 82% said that it was important that organizations align with their group's values. And that is, we'll jump into that when we get to the wellness, but that is a huge contribution to members' sense of wellness. Yes, I agree with you, Sasha. This is the part where it feels like very aligned with like Jewish values, Jewish faith, Jewish, like that framework of seeing what drives your philanthropy. So let's go to the next slide and dig in a little bit. So we asked, why'd you join? You could have done 1,000 things. And we saw that this movement is mobilizing 370,000 philanthropists, that there are 4,000 groups, right? So it's a crowded field, and they could have joined anywhere. They joined Amplifier. Why did they join? They joined to increase the impact of their giving by pooling resources. And so the green and the yellow is really where you should focus, because the green meant that was selected as very important, and the yellow as quite important. So if you look at that of increasing your impact, I'm not going to do the quick math, but it's about 81%, right? And then what we were talking about as we were preparing today, where the spending time with friends, that 75% was really surprising, because nationally it was maybe 2 digits. Like that option was maybe 10%. It was a really low amount. And what that communicates, and when you see like the increased sense of belonging, like there is something about like folks that come to giving circles who may be starting their career or transitioning away from their career into retirement, or maybe, like they've moved and are looking for a local Jewish community or whatever that may be. Like there is this sense of like wanting to be with others that permeates, and that often gets seen as like it is what it is. No, like this is really what's bringing people to you. And so I would very much like hold that front and center when you're thinking about recruiting folks, that the social aspect is really important. But there are other really, really interesting motivations to join, whether it's building relationships with those who share values or identities. I mean, 49% said that was really important, right? Forming connections with community was also really a big driver, as it was to learn from others about the issues and topics of interest to me. To Michael's point, like it can be so paralyzing to see the polarization in our communities, and to often know where to get accurate information, know where to get information that can help me act in ways that like create the change that I want to do. Like we're desperately seeking to learn with one another and to act with one another, and that is really something that's bringing people to you. So we'll keep going to the next one to just say that we wanted to see like, okay, so that's what brought you into these circles. Like, did it have an effect on your giving? Did it have an effect on how you show up? And it did. The time that folks volunteer since joining their collective giving group increased by 55%. That it increased. That's 1 in 2. For 1 in 2 members of your giving circles, they volunteer more since they joined their giving circle, right? And 57% said that their understanding of philanthropy increased a lot, right? They understand now that this is a tool in their democratic toolbox, and they now know how to unleash it, right? But it's paired with 53% saying that they can understand their community or issues better. And so they're coming to learn, and guess what? They're learning. So it's really exciting to see the motivations for what brings them in match what they decide, what members are saying is the change that they're seeing in themselves. So I will move on to the next one. Oh, wait, no, I want to go back to the previous one. So the amount of time that I advocate for issues that matter to me, 36% said that they do that more. And that is something that we'll see when we get to the wellness. This idea that my voice matters, this idea that I should use it to create social change, is something that a participation in a giving circle can contribute to. And that's also really exciting. Okay, now we will move on. So the next slide really talks about, we said, so pick 4 benefits. What are the top 4 benefits you have experienced as a result of being part of your giving circle? The number 1 selected was feel that I can make a difference. I feel generally helpless. And then I find opportunities where I'm like, oh, wow, I can do that. I can do this. Like this idea of moving from like, just, I don't know that I can really create the change in these really large issues that are affecting my community. Giving circles are helping folks feel like they can make a difference. And 99, and the next one most selected was contribute to social and or political change, which is just really exciting, y'all. But it also increases the connection to community and our culture. And I think that that's also really amplifier specific, right? Where it's like folks are coming together to find other Jews and they are really connecting to their community. And then, of course, learning about philanthropy and organization. So it's what brought them in, is what they report changed, and it's also what they see as the biggest benefit. So when you're really thinking about like, how are you telling the story? How are you all trying to recruit new folks? How are you starting to join, like create and host giving circles? Like these are findings that I hope you dig into to say, like, this is a story that we can tell. This is why this matters, and this is why we should bring other people along. So I love that 0% said, I have not experienced any of these benefits. So that's really exciting. Like your members are experiencing benefits and they say it. All right, let's go to the next one. So this slide has to do with wellness. So we looked at what the NHS says are the dimensions of wellness, and they include things like personal agency, health, living a purposeful life, spirituality, belonging, like those types of things that help us to feel like we matter to the people around us, that make us feel seen, that make us feel like we aren't alone. And so when you look at the fact that the orange are quite positively and the green are somewhat positively, that 42% feel like they have increased confidence to take action to change their community, which is similar to the 38% that say that their voices matter on social issues. And that 52 said the sense of belonging to community increased, which when you look at that with the green is even higher, right? But I really love the ability to live your values. That one was also 44%. That's really high. And the ability to live a life with purpose was 36%. It even affected people's health, and wellness, health and physically, mentally, and spiritually. So in the second to last slide, I will sort of tee up where there is opportunity for you all to maybe focus and increase some of your programming or messaging or opportunities for members, because the civic engagement responses for Amplifier were lower than the national. And so we see that like folks are coming together to create change. They feel like that's a benefit. They feel more confident to create change. I think there might be a link that says, so what's next? So where do I go? So what is, now that I feel like my voice matters, now that I understand these issues better, now that I feel like I'm not alone in trying to create this change, what do I do? These numbers are still impressive, right? So 35% say that they discuss social, political, and local issues more often with their people. That 33% said that they gather to do something positive for their community, right? That's 1 in 3. That's still very high. And 38% are volunteering, with organizations and associations, but 52% give and or raise more money. So that's really, really exciting. And 36% support political organizations, parties, or campaigns. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a great quote from one of the people that we interviewed for this research, Aviva Stamfer from the Washington Women's Foundation, that I think sums up just the huge potential that exists from you all bringing together Jewish philanthropists. And she said, one of the things that I got really excited about at Amplifier was collective giving with a Jewish lens. There are a lot of different ways to be a Jew, and my feeling is you find the way that works for you. This felt like it could be another way to be a Jew. And I was so excited that there could be something that could work for people when a more religious perspective just didn't fit. I think that's why it's been successful. It can live both separately from the religious idea of Judaism, but still very much connected to that rich tradition and history. We heard from so many Jews for the research and talking about just the values and tradition and practices of giving that are so integral to your faith, and how that continues to be carried on regardless of how religious and how much you actually practice the faith. It is ingrained, and it's something that is so powerful and can really be galvanized to create the change that you want to create. And I just very much encourage you that if you don't already host one, if you aren't part of one, if you know, are kind of stuck and just like don't know how to move forward, like please, please, please continue to support this, because it is creating change in your communities across the country. So with that, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for participating. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you for even listening to this, because we think this is just very exciting stuff and we're hugely supportive. So with that, I will pass it back to Sasha.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that incredible, like, quick zoom through so much data. I had these numbers weeks ago, and I'm still, like, my brain is still crunching through them. So I imagine everyone on this call is like, wait, what was that? What was that? We will send you all of these slides. And I want to open it right now for questions, right? Questions you might have about the methodology, about the numbers, about what it means for your organization, your giving circle, whatever it is. So I want to invite you to either unmute and ask your question, or put your question in chat, whichever is easier for you, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. And I know sometimes it takes a little time for folks to be ready, so feel free to either, like, raise your hand visually, use the emoji. Great, let's do Gwen and then